Hey guys, I'm Just Lee Belmont, your noble vampire hunter, and today we're going to be talking about speedrunning. More specifically, why you should speedrun. But before that, let's talk about what speedrunning is. To put it simply, speedrunning is simply trying to beat a game as fast as you possibly can. And this is accomplished by using a combination of both skill, dexterity, and possibly even abusing game mechanics to do so. Now I know what you're thinking. Lee, this probably requires me to spend hundreds of thousands of hours to be good at this game, right? Well, I'm here to debunk that mystery. Anyone can be a speedrunner. Period. You don't need to spend hundreds of thousands of hours. You just need a strong desire to play the game that you want to play in a speedy and efficient manner. And I say this because, as someone who does a weekly series where I try to learn a new speedrun game on every Monday, shameless self plug, I can attest that all you need to do is to play the game to the best of your ability in an efficient time. Now, this piece of advice specifically applies to those just getting started for speedrunning. Now, of course, you're going to need to devote a lot more time if you're trying to get a world record or something like that, but for the sake of simply getting into the hobby, it's not really that much more complicated than that. Now, there are some helpful things you can do before you even start the run. For example, I highly suggest looking up the route for certain games if you happen to be playing something along the lines of, let's say, a Metroidvania or an RPG. Like, these games in particular pretty much necessitate the need for a guide. And this is largely due in part to the sheer scope of these games, because the maps themselves are much larger than a typical linear game. And that's not to dismiss linear games either, right? Let's use the first Castlevania as an example. If you don't know about how overpowered the holy water is before running that game, then you're going to have a much harder time trying to get through that. That said, the research aspect of it doesn't have to be a chore. If anything, to me, I kind of find it insightful to be able to see what these cool tricks are that I can do to get started for speedrunning. Another example for this would be the damage glitch in Portrait of Ruin. So specifically for Richter mode in Portrait of Ruin, some of the bosses can be quite a challenge without this glitch, but with the prior knowledge knowing of how to perform this, you can make very tough bosses into a cakewalk by doing this. I think there should be a distinction between the type of glitch that sort of allows a player to feel like they're performing a sort of skill versus a type of glitch that allows the player to sort of break the game by either breaking out of its boundaries or completely abusing mechanic that was unintended. Now, for the sake of speedrunning, I think it's very interesting to bring up the idea of glitches within runs. Seeing as how speedruns are explicitly done with the intention of finishing the game as fast as possible, I think it should be noted that glitches should be expected when performing these kinds of runs. That said, I think for the sake of a new player, I highly recommend focusing on runs that don't have a heavy amount of glitches involved. And this isn't to necessarily dissuade people from running games with glitches in them, because I personally like glitches. I think they're really fun. I think they can allow for very creative ways of problem solving various issues within games. That said, a very common thing that I've noticed from newer runners is that they get dissuaded when they feel like they have to spend several hours learning a glitch than spending several hours to learn the run. I think this is probably one of the larger things within the speedrun community that can turn off newer runners, and I encourage runners to sort of find their own niche when it comes to running the games that they like. In an ideal scenario, you want to spend more time playing the game than learning a glitch. Now, I mentioned the idea of finding your niche within speedrunning. I think speedrunning in general is a very sort of self-reflective hobby, and I think it's important to know what you're interested in before you even start running a game. It's important to ask yourself, how do I feel about RNG in a run? How do I feel about glitches within a run? How do I feel about the sheer length of a run? All of these are important factors in a run, but most importantly, I think the fun factor comes down to it. And to me, I think the fun factor in a speedrun stems from fun and engaging movement. And I say this because all of my favorite speedrun games have fun and exciting movement. For example, Komajo Densetsu 2. I knew from the start that I would love playing this game because of how smooth the movement was for Sakuya. Your character can backflip, throw knives, jump, float with such grace that it almost looks like an acrobatic act in motion while playing the game. And that's the thing, right? Speedrunning is supposed to look cool, at least from a spectator's point of view, and it should be cool to perform as well from the player's point of view. One of the reasons why I really like speedrunning Richter mode in Castlevania Symphony of the Night, God rest my thumb, is how stylish the movement is for that game in addition to the high skill ceiling that can be performed within the game. And I bring up high skill ceiling because I feel like it's important to always be able to feel like you're learning throughout each run. Now, the idea of learning translates to both higher level runs and for people looking to get into the hobby as well. I think it's good to always feel that sense of accomplishment after finishing a run, and that doesn't necessarily mean having to get a PB on each run. It could even be something as simple as, hey, I learned how to fight the boss in a more efficient manner, or hey, my movement might be a little better if I do this in this area, and that's important for speedrunning. As someone who is a proud advocate for self improvement, I find that speedrunning is one of the most tangible ways of being able to do this within a video game. And this ties into being able to see your various splits while doing runs, and being able to say, hey, at this part, I might have done something better here to be able to have given me a better time. And I think it's neat that I bring up the idea of splits because when I first started out, I kind of hated the idea of using splits, but now that I've kind of done speedruns a bit more, I think they're pretty good in terms of seeing how accurate they are for your times. For newer runners, if you have a sort of concern about seeing a red split, I recommend giving it a try without using splits because, for the sake of simply getting to the hobby, it's good to just try it and get like a feel for things and then worry about specific segments to work on later because you'll know what parts you did well on, you'll know what parts you had some trouble on, so I recommend saving the splits for later. There's a sort of freedom that comes with not using splits in that it's just you and the timer and the game, and it's really just to see how fast you can do it. My favorite part about learning a new game is that I can allow myself to be patient with myself when learning it because I don't know the optimal way to do things. All I know what to do is based off my own experience, if assuming I don't look at a guide. And I think sometimes it's probably healthier to not even look at like what the competition is doing because doing that can lead to some sort of like anxiety when performing a run. And when just starting out, I think it's important to simply focus on having fun and not worrying too much about what the competition is capable of doing because that's a very easy way to psych yourself out. You know, it's funny. I don't think I've mentioned how I even got started speedrunning. So, as the young impressionable adult that I was, back in the day, I noticed that there were several runners running the Castlevania series, more specifically Dawn of Sorrow. I believe I got started watching Rom Scout do some runs as in Julius mode actually, and I think it left such an impression that it pretty much just evolved into me saying, "Man, I've always wanted to try this, and I just really want to give this a shot one day." And it was a matter of just me turning on my stream saying, "You know what? I want to I want to learn how to do a speed run." And I picked the game, I turned on the timer, and I knew I checked out the route beforehand, of course, and I did it. And you know, it wasn't without its hitches, right? Like I had some trouble starting off, but I think it's just the fact that I was able to say, you know, I picked the game, I turned the timer on, and I went with it. Was just That's all you really need to do, you know? You don't need to be a world-class runner to get started. You don't need to sink hundreds of thousands of hours to even get your foot in the door. You just need a strong desire to play the game that you love, that you're passionate about, that you're interested in learning and improving in, and just do it, you know? Like it really is as simple as that. And I know I've said that so many times over on this podcast, but it's as simple as that. You just got to do it. You know, I think one of the best parts that has come out of speedrunning, in addition to the self improvement aspect, is that I've been able to meet like a good amount of people, some of my best friends even, just by seeing them try to get into speedrunning. And it's super encouraging to be able to say that, you know, I'm able to help out some of my buddies get into this hobby. And, you know, I've been there for them when they started their first stream. And it's neat because speedrunning is primarily like, you know, it's kind of like a single player thing at the end of the day, right? I mean, you know, you have races, you have events that bring people together, but it's really introspective, and it's cool to see people kind of branch out of that comfort zone and be able to say, "Hey, I want to give you a hand. I want to help you out. I want to see you succeed." And it's just it's incredibly motivating to be able to kind of put myself in that sort of, you know, mentor state for like people who are newer. And I really wish someone would have been able to help me out when I first started out speedrunning because I had to essentially just learn everything by myself and, like, you know, look at the occasional route and guide. But it's just there really is some brilliance to the community of that, and more specifically, there's brilliance to doing the community aspect of it in a one-on-one setting because to me, I think that's the most conducive way to learning for both the person running the game and the person helping out. And I don't really want to sound too preachy because, you know, that's not my intent here. I really just want to see more people get into this hobby because it's fun. It's entertaining to watch. Like, my goodness, man, just think of games done quick. Like, speedrunning has helped the world out by trying to have its own charity event related to this, and it's so cool to see all these people come together for such a good cause. And you know, I want to leave ourselves with like kind of a closing thought. that my friend Espresso tells me a lot. He would tell me that the real speedruns are the friends you make along the way. So, with all that in mind, I hope that didn't sound too preachy. I hope this has at the very least encouraged at least one person to consider speedrunning. I'm just an ordinary dude. All I did was turn on the timer, pick up my favorite game, pick up the controller, and do it. If I can do it, so can you. So on that note, I am Chesley Belmont, your noble vampire hunter, signing out, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.